So Thunderbolts is out now. Paul Asay from Plugged In has seen the movie. So Paul,
I have.
Tell us a little bit about Thunderbolts. What should people know about it?
So Thunderbolts is essentially sort of an anti-hero story,
Okay.
right? You have these very C-list heroes who were actually, a lot of them were villains
Okay.
for a good chunk of the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yep.
We've seen them in other TV shows, other movies, and they're typically not very nice people. They're people who you shake your fist at and say, why are you doing these things?
Yeah.
But they've come together now, and they come sort of together accidentally. They all get sort of locked in this super secret bunker by the person who's been hiring them to get rid of all of her super secret secrets.
Okay.
And it turns out that some of the secrets she wants to get rid of are them. So she hires all of these very skilled assassins to kill one another. And when they realize that they've all been hired to kill each other, they realize that they are in a trap. They need to get out. And so they make their way out with a mysterious guy named Bob. And then the story progresses from there.
Okay. All right. So, Marvel has, I would say, not had maybe the best run recently of movies. How do you think that this compared with some of the more recent ones, say Captain America, the more recent Marvel films that people might be thinking about?
So I would say that compared to the most recent Captain America, some of the other ones that you've talked about, it feels like a return to form. And one of the things that I really liked about it was that the heroes, the quote unquote heroes here, are not overpowered. They're not, they feel like they're better than us. All of them could certainly beat me up, but you do have this sense of it feels a little bit more grounded in reality, at least in terms of the heroes, and so that helps ground the story, if you will, and it comes with a lot of heart, a lot of character. One of the things, and I think we've even talked about it right here,
right?
Sometimes Marvel can lose its way with all of the special effects, with all the powers, with all the splash, bang, pow.
Right.
This one, they sometimes forget that it's character that drives a story.
Right.
And this one is driven by character. These people who are flawed, they have problems. We care about them, and we care about them more and more as the movie goes on.
Okay. And them being underpowered or not the most powerful heroes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe does maybe lend itself to a little more connection with them and a little more concern with maybe what they're dealing with, what they're going through.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that you mentioned connection, because not only do they connect with the audience, but they connect with each other. And that's one of the things that I actually really liked about this movie, is it really talked about that sense of community, that sense of teamwork, that sense of togetherness. And that was a powerful through line throughout the entire thing, where you have these people who actually don't necessarily like each other very much, especially at the beginning.
Yeah.
They need to work together. And then they realize as time goes on that the community is what makes it work.
See, that's really interesting. What this makes me kind of think of is I think the obvious comparison, just as you were describing it, across the way to the other big comic company is Suicide Squad, right? Where you have a lot of like former villains that kind of get thrust into this hero or anti-hero role to try to solve a problem for the ultimate good, I guess you could say, that ultimately helps people. But it also seems to harken back to the original Avengers, where a big piece of that movie was all of these different heroes that we had really come to be attached to.
Right.
There was a lot of conflict initially in that first Avengers movie where they had to really come together by the end and learn how to work together and save the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also reminds me, maybe the best comparison actually would be Guardians of the Galaxy.
Ah, okay.
You know, because you have these lovable losers. You just don't know what they're all about. You know, they just can't figure out what to do with one another at first. And that's sort of what it reminds me of.
And there's kind of that found family element too, I would imagine, that runs through.
Exactly. So Suicide Squad is an interesting comparison, and I've seen that comparison before. This one feels a little bit lighter, a little less cynical than the Suicide Squad does, because I think that Suicide Squad, it combines some villains, right?
Sure.
The people in Thunderbolts, they sort of teeter on the edge, if you will.
It balances that kind of Marvel kind of edge. They don't go too far, right? Although you
right.
said there was maybe some harsher language in this than.
Yeah. So if you're a parent and you're wondering whether, can my 14-year-old see this? So the things that you really have to be aware of is that the language is kind of harsh. I would say that it's a step above your typical MCU movie, not maybe the recent ones, because I think they've been getting more profane as time has gone on. But I do think that you will be surprised by the level of profanity that you hear here. The action sequences, the violence, it's pretty much on par. But there is, I do want to mention that you do see kids imperiled a little bit more. Like you see kids exposed to violence. You see kids who are subjected to violence. And I think that can be a difficult thing to wade through. Often it's done in the realm of flashbacks. What our characters experienced as they were growing up.
I see.
But it can be a difficult thing to watch, I think, for some.
Okay, so on that topic, what are some other things that you would just like to make parents aware of just with Thunderbolts?
So it swings a little bit darker. The movie has a lightness. It feels almost at times like a comedy. But at the same time, what we're dealing with here is not only are these characters not exactly sure how to work with each other, they're not exactly sure how to work within themselves. There is a through thread of these characters. They've made some mistakes and they are very, very aware that they've made some mistakes. And there's some feel a sense of despair. Some feel a sense of I am not worthwhile. And that is that can be a really good thing to talk about, right? But it can also be potentially a little bit triggering, if you will. One of the characters, he actually just thinks that everybody would be better off without him. And that sort of springboards into, and I'm going to spoil something, so very, very sorry about this. But
spoiler alert.
But one of the main bad guy here is a character named the Void.
Okay.
And the void is just this darkness that can sweep over the entire city. We see that, and he causes people to vanish. But that void is really a manifestation of the sense of annihilation, that sense of worthlessness, that sense of hopelessness that can come with despair, that can come with depression. This is almost like a visual portrayal of mental illness in a way. And that can be it can be a fantastic catalyst for conversations, but the solution to it is the sense of community. And that's a beautiful thing. But I was sort of thinking as I was writing out my notes, for people who don't have that community, that can be a difficult thing to watch, because how can I find that saving grace of community if I don't have anyone who I can connect to?
Yeah. I get what you're saying, because it's tackling some pretty real issues in an interesting way with characters that aren't these like kind of godlike figures as well, right? Because they fall into kind of the anti-hero camp. Maybe they feel a little more accessible, or it's easier to believe that they kind of fall into, hey, they struggle with these mental health issues and different things like that too. So let's just touch on the characters a little bit, because as you mentioned, you have some like straight up villains. You have some characters that maybe have kind of filled hero roles before. So the main character is the sister of Black Widow, right? Is she called Black Widow now?
She is
Yelena?
Yeah, Yelena Belova is her name, and she is sort of the half-sister, quasi-sister of Natasha Romanoff, who was, of course, the Black Widow from the Avengers movies. And she is sort of the centerpiece of this whole movie. She's the central character. She's also dealing with her crazy father figure, Red Guardian Alexei, who is really he is really the glue that holds the Thunderbolts together in a way.
Really? Okay.
He has this naive belief in heroism.
Okay.
And he believes that all these people can become a team even though they don't like each other very much.
Yeah.
And he's a delightful character played by David Harbour. He is hilarious. You also have Bucky Barnes, who a lot of people know as Winter Soldier. He comes into play here. He's actually sort of a rookie congressman who decides to slap back on his arm and run out and do some stuff. John Walker, who, if you have watched Captain America
and the Winter Soldier.
Actually Falcon
and the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, on Disney Plus.
Yes.
He was the prime
TV show.
antagonist for that.
Yes, that's right.
He was Captain America for a second himself.
Bad Cap.
Bad Cap. And he is one of the most unlikable and yet more sympathetic characters that we see here.
And he's dealing with a lot of fallout from that prior show where he made a lot of mistakes too, very public mistakes, right?
Very public mistakes, and he feels the weight of those. And you know, one of the things that I love about just the characters that we see here, we see the weight of those mistakes. We see, you know, in sort of a Christian context, we see the weight of their sin. And Yelena, she has this really touching speech that she makes where she talks about how she is so aware of all the mistakes that she's made in her life, and she gets home from work, which is killing people. She gets home
She's
from
an
work
assassin.
and she thinks about all the bad things that she's done, and she drinks, and then she gets up again and she goes out to her work, and she's just in this cycle where she works, she feels terrible about herself, and it really it strikes me as so real in a way, because I think so many of us can sort of fixate on what we've done wrong. I know that in my own life, I often do that when I think, man, I really messed that up.
Yeah, we may not be professional assassins. That might not be
No,
what we're doing.
that's not where we go.
But it is a very relatable feeling of like you're going back, oh gosh,
Yeah.
I can't believe
Yeah.
I did this.
Right,
You know?
right.
Am I unlovable?
Am I
of a thing,
unlovable?
right?
Am I worth anything?
Right.
You know, and that theme comes up again and again and again. Worthlessness, you know, hopelessness, all of this stuff.
Yes.
And Alexei, her quasi-father,
Yep.
goes up to her and talks about when she was part of a youth soccer team and how much joy she had and how she wanted to be the goalie because she wanted to be the person who protected all of her teammates if they made a mistake. She wanted to be the one to guard it. And then he says something that I think is so lovely. He says, when I look at you, I don't see your mistakes. And I think that that's, in a way, it made me think about how God looks at us. He sees our mistakes, of course, you know, but when he looks at us, he sees what he created us to be.
Yeah. Well, it makes me think of the prodigal son, right?
Yeah.
Is that father runs to his son. He is not like focused on the mistakes in that moment. He just wants to hold his son in his arms again and bring him back into his home, which is that's a really cool message.
It is
really
a great message, you know, and I think that's the nice thing about Thunderbolts, because yes, it has some problems, and yes, please read the Plugged In review and make sure that you're aware of all of those problems before you go see the movie, especially with your family. But if you do take your family, there's a lot of heart here. There's a lot of things that you can talk with your kids about.
Springboard to some good conversations.
Absolutely.
For sure.
And I really appreciated the heart of Thunderbolts. It didn't let itself get overwhelmed by the special effects. It wasn't driving to a sequel, although there's clearly a sequel in the works. It felt like a very nice movie that you could walk out of and smile a little bit after seeing.
All right, so we'll wrap up our conversation there on Thunderbolt. So thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. So yeah, please like, subscribe, leave comments down below as well. So let us know if you plan to see Thunderbolts. Let us know the characters that you're excited seeing, any Marvel movies that you've really particularly enjoyed, and are you excited for some of the things that they're looking to do in the future? So
Fantastic Four is coming up.
Fantastic Four is coming up. So we'll have our full content review in the description below, so definitely check that out. That's on PluggedIn.com. And yeah, we'll talk to you next time.